All right, great. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this. This is, I believe, our fifth webinar now. The remainder of our webinars, including this one, are available online at nogales.com under the education section. There you'll find the video of the previous webinar. You'll also find the actual PowerPoint presentation, and in some cases, you'll find an attached file in case there was a project we were working on during the webinar that you can download and continue working on your own. This webinar is all about custom development. So the idea here is that there are several tools to use, and there's all kinds of different development projects. So how do you make a decision as to what tool to choose? So we're going to keep the discussion somewhat high level. What we're going to cover is just a basic introduction to what custom development is and why we need it, the different solutions that are available to us as developers or folks who are thinking of getting into development, and how to choose what tool to use, and what other factors you should consider, and then we'll finish with some Q&A. The whole thing should take us somewhere around 20 minutes or so. I apologize. Sometimes these things kind of run over. I get a little excited when I delve into a topic, so hang in there. Hopefully we can wrap this up within 20 to 30 minutes. So before during the sign up for the presentation, we had a quick survey to find out the audience that we're dealing with. So we asked if you are a developer, and 60% of you said yes, 59%, which was actually surprising. That's quite high. And then we had 30% that said kinda, and that's very typical of a Lawson customer that has to wear different hats. And then 11% said no. So we're going to keep the discussion at a level that makes sense for this audience. So a lot of you might ask, why would I even do custom development? And well, with 60% of you being developers, that question is probably not something in your mind. But I get from customers all the time, what are some of the needs that I might have that more in custom development? So one of those, so I've kind of put these four major areas on here. You could probably think of many more, but we'll delve into each one of these separately. So obviously, interfaces, that's building an interface between the Lawson system and some other system, or within a component of the Lawson system to another component of the Lawson system, or maybe two third-party applications being interfaced together. And there's several tools in Lawson that can help you do that. Reporting, that's pretty obvious. So creating reports, there's lots and lots of canned reports that come with Lawson. A lot of times I find that when a customer is asking for a report, it's only because they're not aware of the report that already exists in Lawson. So outside of that, though, there are quite a few tools you can use to do reporting. We're going to cover a couple of those tools today. There is function and UI is the category I picked. So this is what I mean by this is adding functionality to already existing components within Lawson, or creating new functionality within Lawson that doesn't exist today. So that could be a screen that you're using right now where you want to change some functionality, or a report you're using right now, or an extract you're using right now that you want to change some functionality on, or if you just want to build completely new functionality into your Lawson application. And then I created a category called systems. So these would be tasks that typically a system admin person would do, or maybe a DBA would do, or maybe these are repeated jobs that happen within the system that you kind of want to automate, more things that a user doesn't actually get to see. So we'll cover these four different areas and how to choose what tools to use in these areas. And like I said, if you have any questions, save them to the end, and we can address them. I'm willing I can stay on the call for another half hour after the presentation to answer your questions. So the tools that I'm going to cover here And there's more tools than these, I'm sure, but these are kind of the ones that we think of initially when we think of developing something custom for the Lawson application. So there's Lawson Process Automation. A lot of you know this tool as Process Flow. We did a session on Process Flow before, our previous session, in fact, which is available online. So if you're interested in finding out more about that tool and how to get started, that's a really good webinar to get started on. And we're planning to do an advanced one soon. There's Lawson Business Intelligence. You've heard of this as LBI. This tool has several different components that are great for creating reports and gathering business intelligence data, creating dashboards and smart notifications and things like that. There's Design Studio. A lot of you are familiar with Design Studio. It's a great tool for changing the look and feel of the screen or adding some very basic presentation layer functionality to the screen. You can also create some edit check type logic. You can create all new screens from a mashup of different screens. There's lots you can do within Design Studio. And then there's 4GL, which you've also kind of heard referred to as COBOL, who's training you would get in the case tools and workbench. And what those do, they can create brand new Lawson screens, things Lawson screens that don't come as part of your installation. So, whereas HR11 and PO20 and, HR211 and those screens all come with an installation of Lawson, you can create your own that do completely different things using this tool. Or you can change the behavior and logic of existing programs. And then I have Perl and shell scripting on here. And this is really more for the sysadmin type application. The types of tasks that those guys would normally do can be automated or can be written in these tools. And then there's, of course, Java. So a lot of the new landmark applications, you'll know this, are written in Java. So there's SDKs for those. We're not going to cover that here because it's relatively new and it is not likely something, we haven't seen a lot of clients actually use that to create new applications. So let's talk about interfaces. So when we're talking about interfaces, you'll notice I didn't use all of those tools here, but there's these three tools that we think are generally used for building an interface. Okay, so what's an interface? An interface is basically a way for one system to talk to another system. So it could be Lawson talking to your time entry system, or Lawson talking to your order entry system, or maybe Lawson talking to Lawson in the way that it doesn't come out of the box, okay? So I've listed a few criteria to help you decide which tool to use and when. So there's two kinds of interfaces typically. There's inbound interfaces and outbound interfaces. So LBI isn't exactly the first tool you would think of when it comes to building interfaces, but if you're just extracting files, it's possible that it's actually a good tool, especially if you have the skill set in-house. So I've put that here for an outbound interface. I've seen several clients use LBI successfully as an interfacing tool. It isn't meant to be that, but it can be used that way. So you've got LBI, but for inbound and outbound interfaces, really LPA and the 4GL tool set are kind of the better ways to go. Now, we're talking about interfaces, so one of the big considerations around interfaces is, does it need to be done real-time or batch? Well, if it needs to be done real-time, really one of the better ways to go is with LPA, because it has some real-time components that can actually grab a piece of data that's coming in and actually affect an action right then and there. It's relatively easy to also do that with 4GL, but it wasn't built for that, so I didn't give it a high mark there. Volume-wise, so let's say you have, and this is kind of where people pick the wrong tool, in my opinion. So when it comes to volume, you really need to be careful what kind of volume you're dealing with and how quickly that volume needs to be pushed through the system. So I've seen folks build interfaces using LPA that use the SQL node, for example, and the SQL node grabs, it runs a query that returns a set of data, and then LPA basically cycles through that data until it's done. Well, that's fine and good unless the results of that query are returned all at once and they're quite large. So if you've got a customer that's got 40,000 employees and 40,000 records get returned into that, you're running some risks there. The risk is you're allocating enough memory for all of those at once, unless you're doing it differently. And then it could take quite a long time. And then if it breaks halfway through, you're really talking about a kind of a disaster that is very difficult to sift through and find out what went wrong. So I don't really like LPA for very high volume batch type transactions or interfaces, but I do like 4GL for that because it just takes things one record at a time and chugs through it. There's not a lot of babysitting and hand holding going on. There's not a lot to crash really. If you notice your 4GL jobs the canned Lawson jobs you have now, they hardly ever have issues. Sometimes they go into needs recovery, but it's always for a very good reason that happens. But unless your flow is designed very well, you're likely to run into issues if you haven't accounted for error handling and kind of memory usage and exceptional cases. There's some extremes you have to consider. So it can take quite a bit to make a LPA interface that handles very high volume of data good. So I put a lot of time there only because I think it warrants it. I think that's where people make some of the bigger mistakes. Automation, they can all do automation. I think, LPA is actually very good at doing it. LBI is very good at it, but again, it's not a very good interface tool. 4GL, there is some automation through the recurring job definition you can do, but it's not very sophisticated. Maintenance-wise, so again, this kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier a little bit. As far as maintenance goes, the 4GL programs, once you've got them in place, they require really zero maintenance. The system is designed to run those things. Now, when it comes to, we'll talk about upgrade friendliness in a minute, but maintenance-wise, they're okay, and they just kind of sit there and, they don't really require much maintenance. Whereas LPA, there is some maintenance that's involved. You either have to design a very, very good interface that takes care of itself, or you run the risk of, having to maintain something for kind of babysit something. And we've got lots and lots of flows that I've seen out there that just kind of require almost constant maintenance. They break all the time. So there's quite a bit that needs to go into designing a good flow. Now, if you design a great flow, it can be relatively maintenance free. The next big thing is capability, and this could be your decision maker right there, right? So if LPA to me is kind of one of the more capable tools that there is because of all the nodes that it has. So those nodes can do all kinds of different actions, right? They can send email. They can change your RM, resource management records. They can read through files and connect to databases. They can make ACKS calls. I can go on and on. They can run data stage maps. There's tons of stuff those can do. So if the interface you're running has the sort of need that is complex and needs these kind of different complex nodes, then that may be your number one choice. When it comes to 4GL, really very, very low kind of complexity and very low capability. Really, all I can do is kind of read and write from tables and read and write from files and apply logic. So here's the big 800-pound gorilla is will my interface or will my custom code really be upgrade friendly? Will it go through an upgrade? Well, the answer is yes to all of the above. Really, no matter what you develop as a custom program, you have to look at it when it comes to your upgrade. I like keeping a nice database or a spreadsheet that has a list of every custom bit of everything we've ever done for every client. And when it comes to an upgrade, we just pull that out and say, okay, does this upgrade affect this or not? So you need to do that anyway. But the thought is that if your 4GL program requires some custom tables within Lawson, yes, maybe that makes it less upgrade friendly. But to me, they're all relatively upgrade friendly. They just all need to be looked at. And then the last bit is availability. So LPA and LBI, those are two tools that you need to purchase versus the 4GL that kind of comes with your Lawson installation. So it's part of your license. You have a compiler as a part of your installation that you've installed, so you can use that. So reporting. Now, reporting, there's really only two tools that do good reporting. You could technically do reporting using LPA, but that'd really be just kind of a not that great of a tool for that. And there's all kinds of third-party tools that can do reporting. In fact, Crystal can on its own do reporting. Now, within LBI, you're very likely using Crystal. I'm not going to go through every one of these categories with you, but I'll cover the ones that are different extremes. So you'll notice on distribution, LBI is excellent where 4GL is poor, and I only believe that because LBI was built with distribution in mind, so with bursting and that sort of thing in mind. So if the kind of report you're writing requires complex distribution, even very minor complexity distribution, 4GL will quickly become something that will not be that useful. Security-wise, they're both good. Again, bursting kind of goes along with distribution, and to me, LBI is excellent at that. It can do some incredible things, and I've seen clients do some really amazing things with that. Maintenance-wise, LBI can be a little bit of a maintenance chore, really. Depending on how well your installation was done and depending on how well you've allocated resources towards your LBI installation, then you may be okay. But I find that there's quite a bit of maintenance that clients have had to do with that. And again, as we said before, 4GL has very low maintenance needs. Presentation layer. Again, LBI, you're using Crystal, you've got some very creative freedom. You can even use style sheets and things like that. So you can make a very beautiful report. Your imagination is kind of the limit there. Whereas with 4GL, you get what Lawson canned reports look like. And there's something nice about that, right? You don't have to be creative and you don't have to be artistic to come up with a decent looking report that way. But again, you also don't have the freedoms to make it look like however you want. They both require a relatively high level of skill, but they're easy to develop. It's easy to develop those skills in-house. And again, LBI is something you have to purchase, but 4GL isn't. So function and UI. Now these are so again, as we said before, this is more like screens you have in Lawson. And functionality you have within Lawson that you want to change, or you want to add some new, completely brand new functionality, or you want to change the user interface. By UI, I mean user interface. You want to change the user interface or the user experience within the Lawson application. Now, really, for most of what you want to do there, especially, obviously, I assume you're mostly using Portal based on another survey we took another time. In Portal, the Design Studio tool can do most of what customers need, from changing the user interface and the user experience. Okay, but when it comes to changing business logic, it can be relatively weak because it can do some edit checks up front, and you can put some logic in there, but you can't create all brand new logic. Like, for example, you can't store any new data, or you can't store data in a way that isn't being stored now, and you can't retrieve data in a way that it isn't being retrieved now. So that's where 4GL comes in. So if the change you want to make includes changes and creation of new business logic, then 4GL is the tool you'd want to use. But otherwise, I would say that the design studio should be enough to do what you want. And then, there's also a skill level there, right? The skill level required to do design studio is quite low. I mean, you can go through, I think there is a couple of CBTs online that you can run through relatively quickly. And for some minor things like hiding certain fields on a screen, you could do something like that within 5 to 10 minutes. Versus to learn how to work with the case tools and the workbench and things like that, to get and also the compiler and to get a new 4GL program or a modification to one to compile. There's quite a bit of skill required there. It takes several days of training. And I believe, now don't quote me on this, I believe the availability on both of those is just kind of out of the box. I believe the Design Studio comes with your installation, but don't quote me on that. I haven't looked at an invoice in quite some time. And as far as, you notice I also have LPA listed here. And I only listed that because it can be used to introduce new functionality. So for example, during within a design studio, you can trigger a flow to happen, and that flow can go and create some business logic. For example, if you wanted to create some approval when something happened within Lawson, there could be you could add a button using Design Studio that ends up triggering a flow, and that flow goes into some business logic and comes back. So those two things can be used together, or LPA can just on its own do some business logic, but it's usually not a UI. In fact, it's never a UI change. It's always a business experience change. And then lastly, we'll come to system administration tools and changes. So what are we talking about here? So your sysadmin on any given day does a lot of different things. Not the least of which is cleaning up old log files, or adding users, or checking security, or importing files into interface files and things like that into tables, or maybe some DBA tasks to kind of make sure certain things are running the way they are. Well, those types of things are typically done using shell or Perl scripts that your sysadmin is very competent in writing. Now, in both of those are really available in both the Unix application and the Windows application. I'm not very familiar with how they work within the iSeries environment, but if somebody has a question about that, I can get you an answer. I know iSeries has tools built within it to do a lot of these things. So let's just cover a couple of these points here. Performance-wise, Perl and Shell, you're getting kind of at the fundamental level, you're talking directly to the operating system a lot of times, so your performance is usually as good as it can get. Versus with LPA, you're using things like RMI and the process flow engine. So there's a lot of pieces there to go through, and performance can suffer there. Capability-wise, Perl is excellent. LPA is good, and I only say good because it can actually call a Perl or Shell script. So it probably should be called excellent, but only because of the other one. Maintenance-wise, Perl and Shell scripts, they're as low as you make them, and LPA can be kind of relatively high. Upgrade considerations, again, with your Perl and Shell scripts, like with everything else, you do need to look at it to make sure, but most of the time we don't have to change those very much, rather than change maybe a path or something like that. But typically, a script that was written in one version will work in another one. And then as far as availability, obviously Perl and Shell. Perl is not necessarily free, but you have to install it as a part of your Lawson installation anyway, so it's available to you. And then LPA is something you have to purchase. Portability from one machine to the next and whatnot, they're both really good at that. I think LPA is getting better and better. Then the last bit, which kind of applies to this entire discussion today, is support. How do I get people to support any of this? Now, it's very important for you to understand that, no one's going to support something custom that you built, right? But they will support the tools that are used to build those. So the stuff you're paying for, like LPA and LVI, there's support available to you through Lawson or through Infor that helps support the maintenance and the running of those tools and making sure the components of them are working. But no one's going to actually support the specific custom code that you write. So you need to kind of apples and oranges there, right? So you got to have to understand what you're getting into. Also good to consider a few other things when you're choosing the right tool. You want to make sure that that resources are available within your company or within a company that you rely on to support what you're developing. So if you're developing a process flow interface, that's great, as long as you have somebody in-house that understands how it works, or you've got access to someone that can help you kind of maintain it. You do need to consider how upgrade-friendly things are, and that's really a case-by-case kind of discussion. We usually start with a very quick overview and design, and we in our design process, upgrade friendliness is really one of our things that we kind of study and we look at, and that's something that I really recommend. Licensing cost, again, if you don't own some of these products, then you may have to consider what the licensing cost might be to you and whether or not it's worth it for you to go out and purchase the product for this one project that you're going to do. Performance, a lot of times performance is not an issue, right? So if you're running a job that's just going to run overnight and it takes a few minutes, it could take 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Nobody really cares. But, sometimes you have a job that needs to run, like importing your time records into Lawson from a third-party system that needs to happen on the day payroll is running. Or you have a real-time interface, like orders come in and they need to get into Lawson and fulfilled while the customer is still online. Those types of things, you really need to consider performance. And another place you need to consider performance is in relation with everything else you're doing. So, yeah, sure, you might put a process in there where you don't really care about the performance of that process, but maybe that process hogs up a lot of resources within Lawson that are affecting other things. Dependencies and other things. So, this is just kind of a very, very high level design question here. It's the tools that you pick are going to be dependent on several different components of Lawson running correctly, and you just need to consider that. And then last but not least, the one that no developer likes to deal with, but we all have to, is security. So actually, all of these tools can be written in such a way that they take advantage of security in different ways. So you really need to consider which tool is right for which job when it comes to security. And if security is one of your big sticking points, there's also ways of sidestepping security in each one of those tools. So you want to make sure that you're not doing that if that's one of your considerations. So we extended this offer last time. Actually, quite a few of you took advantage of it. We're very happy to be a part of that and be able to contribute. So we offered a 1 day of free consulting, basically, and we probably had 12 or 13 people take advantage of that. It was really great. It was fun to do. We helped a lot of people get started with their first process flow. And that was really fun for me and some of the guys here. taking those calls and working through some of the flows with everyone. So if there's anything, it doesn't have to be related to custom development. It doesn't have to be related to process flow or anything we've even covered. If you've got something you want to discuss with us, or you want to start a new project that you don't know how to get started on, we're more than happy to help for one day. And that offer ends, this specific offer ends on November 30th. We just always have to make sure we have enough staff to be able to handle that kind of a request, and we have got that kind of forecast right now. If you're interested in that, you can email me at tan@nogales.com. You can call me direct at the number on your screen. Again, this presentation will be available online as well. And then let's see. Our next webinar will be Advanced Process Flow. I know just about everybody asked for that last time, because I think it was one of the better ones that we've done, and because it was more hands-on. This one will be hands-on, so the idea is that we will be doing something on the screen, and you'll be able to follow along with us. We're going to shoot for an hour on this one, and we might even go over a little bit. We haven't finished the presentation yet, so we're not 100% sure how long it's going to take, but it'll be about an hour. If you're signed up for our email list, which you can do online on our website at nogales.com, under the education section, there's a little email field you can sign up on. And if you're getting our emails, you're already signed up. We will be sending notifications well in advance of exactly when that will be. You'll have plenty of time to register. As always, it will be free to all of you. So please take advantage of that. And most importantly, please give us feedback on these presentations and what else you'd like to see. So far we've basically been responding to what you've been wanting to see. I see a question from Thomas. Can we get your slideshow? Yes, this will be available online shortly. Check within the next hour or so, and we will send an email again when it is posted online, so that with a link directly to it. So at this time, I'll open it up for questions, and I'm more than happy to stay on as long as you guys like to answer all your questions. Anyone? By the way, you can type in your questions in the bottom left of the screen there. Okay, it appears there may not be any questions about this session. So if you have comments or questions, you can always go to the education portion of our site, and when this presentation is posted, there'll be a comment section underneath that. You can type in your questions there. We're very good at monitoring that, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. This video will also be available on there. The quality isn't that great. We haven't really figured out how to get it so that the quality is super great, but it's good enough, I think. So you should be able to comment there and put your questions up. So, okay, now we do have a couple questions from Pam. Does it matter what version of Lawson that we're on for LPA or LBI? Yes, that's kind of a tricky question, but not quite. I mean, those two tools have been around for quite some time. So I'd say if you're a 9.0 or greater, you should be able to use both of those tools. In version 8, which we, believe it or not, we have quite a few clients on version 8.03 and 8.1. In those, I'm not too sure about LBI, but I know process flow has definitely been around since then. And it worked a little differently back then, but it's still around. So LPA was process flow, and it's there in those versions. Now, if you haven't purchased it, it may be too late to buy it because it's such an older version. Barb asks, what does Nogales specialize in relative to Lawson? We really do end-to-end implementation, so no specific vertical. We do have quite a few healthcare clients and many in the retail and food service sector, in gaming and hospitality, and banking and financial services. So really everything, and I kind of set those in the order where we're involved. We do end-to-end implementations, a lot of technical development, custom interface development is really one of our big things. So we have 14 consultants, application and technical, and they can help you with any project you have in house. So Pam asks, we're currently on process flow, but MSP of 9006. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that. Okay, so there's some of the components won't be available to you. Some of the newer components, I believe, things like web services and things like that won't be available to you. But the tool itself should be able to create relatively complex interfaces for you. So Lynn asked, can you use 4GL for Landmark? Well, so that's kind of a tricky question. Most of the Landmark applications are developed in Java. You can still use 4GL and deploy it in even the latest version of Lawson. So you can use them concurrently, but they're not the same thing. So, and the word Landmark has kind of meant a few different things over the years, but in its current state, I believe that most of the Landmark deployed applications are written in Java, not 4GL. All right, everyone. Again, further questions, please visit us on the site and post your comments. More than happy to answer them. You can also tweet them at us at Nogales Inc. Or you can email me directly, tan@nogales.com. More than happy to answer any of your questions, and please take us up on our one-day offer. It helped a lot of people last time. We're only doing it out of a place of contribution to the community, and more than happy to be a part of it. And really appreciate you guys joining. Please give us as much feedback as you can and request new classes. We'll be more than happy to provide them. Thank you.